Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe, and today I'm very excited to have my friend Kyle K. Kyle's been sober since March 19th, 1998. That's over 25 years of continuous recovery. Kyle brings a steady presence, creative spirit, and deep gratitude to the life he's built, one day at a time. He cherishes time with his girlfriend, Marlena, and finds creative expression through oil painting, especially portraits. Kyle's journey is a quiet testament to long-term sobriety, personal growth, and the peace that comes from living life fully present. And he's also an amazing cabinet refinisher. I just have to throw that out there for you. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. How you doing, Kyle?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Man, I'm so glad you're here. I appreciate you. So tell me, what was it like growing up, Kyle?
Okay. Well, I am from a kind of I guess my family is two parts. My mom's side of the family is Irish Catholic, big drinkers, real heavy drinkers. They all live in Chicago. My dad's side of the family is Southern Baptist, and they're Tennessee. And I think I got, my Chicago family's very successful, heavy drinking, and all the men are in sales, and the drinking and the being funny and the larger than life and the sales all kind of go together. It's all part of the same. And my Southern family, I don't know that anybody's against. They just don't really. Nobody really drinks. They would have like stories of some Southern, some distant uncle that drank too much, or you know what I mean. But there wasn't a lot of. My parents, I guess, got together he was in the Navy and she was like 18. They were very young. My parents got together very young, and started having kids. And I'm one of four kids. My oldest sister was born with epilepsy, and she's mentally retarded. She had a lot of kind of problems like that. My next sister is 2 years, probably 4 years younger than my first sister's Andrea. My next sister's Janine. Then I came along, and then my youngest brother, rest in peace, he's gone now. He was the youngest, and so he was 4 years younger than me. So there was four kids. Everybody was born in different places in the Navy. White Sands, New Mexico. I was born in Illinois, Virginia, and then here. And I think, my family was, it's not like a type. It's not like, I have friends that have like a type of family. Our family was really different, I think. So growing up, we lived in the middle of nowhere. We lived in the country, and my dad had dreamed of having a farm. So we had a farm, but, we had animals, goats, chickens, stuff like that. And we just lived in the country. And as long as I could remember, I always, as far back as I can remember, I was what is described as restless, irritable, and discontent. I mean, I was a mess. I have no explanation for. I have no good explanation for why I was so self-centered. But years later, if you had asked me, like, do you remember how anybody was doing, how anybody was feeling in the family? It's like, not unless it affected me directly. I just, and I grew up, with my cousins, and I mean, I had a pretty good childhood, I guess. We would roam around. I would take my dog out in the country. I mean, we would just, uh, you know, I have a lot of good memories from childhood. Um, and I think I did have probably some academic problems early on. I had like learning disabilities, difficulty reading, and it never really got addressed in my family. Like, no one ever said, "Hey." I mean, I was kind of always getting in trouble. And looking back on that in school, I think I was, it felt like my choice was, uh, I I sort of identified with my mentally disabled sister, and I just didn't want anyone to think I was stupid, basically. And so I spent a lot of time. I was a troublemaker rather than bad at school. That was what looked like the choice to me. They would be like, "You have to do this," and I'd be like, "I don't have to do anything." And you're going out in the hall, and I'm like, "I love the hall," whatever. So I was always kind of in trouble, and I was also always really attracted to tough kids. I wanted to be kind of tough, and I looked exactly like Kevin Arnold from the Wonder Years. Like, I had this like baby face, and I did not look tough at all. Um, and so, but all my friends, even in like fifth grade, I remember my friends smoked, and I started smoking really early, and and I think probably I was probably 12 or 13 around the first time I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. I feel like maybe had drank before. I kind of have a memory of being in Chicago and my uncle having a Thanksgiving dinner where everybody got champagne, and even the kids, or my family was like, "Oh, he's too young to drink beer. I'll give him a light beer." You know, like it was that kind of a fun loving. Uh, and but the first time I remember getting drunk was my sister had someone spend the night with her, and the three of us, Crystal and my older sister and me, we just got. My parents always had a bunch of alcohol in case my Chicago family visited. They didn't drink at all. They were not drinking at all. But they had all this bar, and it was in the laundry room. It wasn't in like a nice place. It was like just kind of put away in case when my family visited, the drinks came out and they drank with them, but they weren't big drinkers. And so we got a fifth of wild turkey, I think it was, and we were chasing it with blue Kool-Aid, and horrific. And I mean, I don't know what it was. It was a magic elixir. I took, I'd experimented with pot, with other drugs and stuff, but drugs were never a big part of my story. They were a part of it, not a big part of it. But man, I really like alcohol. And it's not everybody's experience, but alcohol just solved something inside of me, just immediately. And and I definitely thought, I'm doing this again. And from the very beginning, what alcohol did to me and what it did for me were miles apart. The very first time I drank, I got drunk, and this I think was it. I got drunk. I remember I blacked out, which was not uncommon when I drank. I'm a blackout drunk. I apparently was in the top bunk, laying face down, and vomited, and was like laying in my vomit. So that's not. And my sister and my best friend cleaned me up, and then they stayed up all night playing Uno. But that's humiliating. That I was, they had to shower me. That all that happened, and that had no effect on what alcohol did for me. What I felt when I drank was, spiritual. I mean, I literally was like, this is it. And from then, it was gradual, but from then I was kind of always wanting to feel that way again. I wanted to, I don't ever remember feeling free like that. I was always tense and fearful and uncomfortable. And, for whatever reason, I was, my heroes at the time were we had hoods in school, hoods and preps and skaters. And I liked the tough, mean kids. And I was like baby faced and a little, not quite overweight, but husky. I had to wear husky jeans, like I was not, I just, all I know is when I took a drink, I didn't I didn't care about any of that stuff. And we just started, my best friend and I, he was into it just as much as I was. And so we just started drinking whenever we could. Sixth grade, I remember, almost getting in trouble because we would go to his house on the weekends and drink. And we were writing a note about like, hey, what, can you get something? Can whatever tonight, throw in the note. And somehow or another, the science teacher got a hold of the note and was like, and the both of us turned into actors. We were like, Miss Dagley, we were making fun of people that act like that. Like we did this whole thing. We were like, I can't believe that you found that. And that was a joke. We were doing a joke and kind of making fun of people but I just lied to adults constantly. And that was the thing I was looking for, is to change how I feel. And I think too, about 15, my dad told us all that he had cheated on my mom and was moving out. And this had an unbelievable impact on me. And I think I had a really kind of a normal desire to be independent. And that desire to be independent took a nasty turn right about that time, where I started forming in myself this, I might go along with an authority figure. I might agree with authorities, but I was going to do whatever I was going to do what I wanted to do. And that started taking form right then. And it was a really powerful piece of my interior that just about killed me, and really has been an ongoing problem trying to unravel that in sobriety. So, so I'm, all through middle school, high school, that's what I was about. I was an escapist. I was looking for fun. I had a lot of fun. We would, I didn't really participate in school. Like I said, I'd already kind of coined myself as a troublemaker to get out of my academic shortcomings. And so I would just, we would leave school in the morning. I had like 4 or 5 friends. We would all leave school together, which is fun for like an hour, and then we would go get drunk somewhere. And at some point or another, I know I moved into my girlfriend's house. My mom got really depressed after the divorce, and things at my house got kind of dark. Like I started smoking inside. My sister moved her boyfriend in. We kind of took over. We didn't have a lot of respect for my mom's, household, and things got kind of weird. You know what I mean? We just kind of like, there wasn't a lot of parental influence. There wasn't a lot of boundaries or rules or any of that stuff. And so, it was just kind of, we kind of had the freedom to do whatever we wanted, which at a certain age is not a good freedom. Like, and so I was off to the races. I was, and as time went on, I I don't remember drinking, I don't ever remember thinking I had a problem with it. I don't think my drinking disturbed me till way too late to do anything about it. I think when I first started being a little concerned about my drinking, I was so out of control. I mean, I really hadn't, probably there was one moment. I remember one moment, and at the end of high school, I was always in school suspension. They would call me to in school suspension, and I think I had passed out in there or something like that. And the teachers called my parents, who were divorced, and they took me to dry dock as a kid. And they were like, and I was about halfway honest with the counselor, and because I was kind of curious, and she said, you're very close to chemical dependence. And I was like, oh, okay. And I couldn't even, I didn't even know what that meant exactly. I didn't care. You know what I mean? Like and most of the things going on with me, honestly, they felt like they were happening to someone else. Like when I quit school, it did not seem impactful, right? It did not seem like a really big deal. And we were doing a lot of stuff like breaking into cars, and my friends, well, I had, at some point or another, I had left home, and I lived with my girlfriend at the time and her family. And this was a life-saving thing that happened to me. And I didn't know it at the time. Her brother-in-law was a master electrician, and he was in a construction job, and he downtown, and he was in charge of it. He was staying there instead of a hotel at her house. And I said, Brian, why don't you let me get a job with you? And he said, no, Kyle, it's way too hard. He's like, you couldn't hang, man. It's really hard. You wouldn't last a day. And my ego, man, I was so like, I will show you. I ended up working there for a couple of years, and that kept me out of so much trouble at a time when I really needed an intervention. It didn't keep me away from booze and drugs, but what it got me away from was all those high school friends that were breaking into cars and going to jail. Like there was a lot of stuff happening at the time that, and I was always interested in fun, and we would get high and climb on top of buildings. We would, I was just interested in a good time. But some of the people I was running with were doing, at one point I remember we broke into the school, and I took the L off of Halls High School, and, just a dumb high school thing to do. And we were just kind of generally wreaking havoc. And one of the kids I was with started doing real damage, real property damage. And it was like, whoa, that was not, I hadn't signed up for that, but I kept finding myself in situations like that. I remember hanging out with a guy who lived in the fort, and we were in there drinking one night, and somebody comes in his door. The fort's like the college slum, if you don't know. And somebody came in there and had been beaten in the face with a pistol. He'd been pistol whipped. They had blood all over him. And actually in that same house, there was another guy living in one of the rooms that was shooting dope. And, we would never see him. But that was, we kind of all knew with the situation. But so I was definitely hanging out in these like kind of more and more sordid places, like, and at a certain point, a lot of the good times dried up, and things, my lifestyle had become, I worked at that job. That was good, and we would drink, and there was something about that job that was like an anchor for me. But anyway, at some point, I kind of got, I started running out of friends. Friendships started falling out of my life pretty quick, and people, and I was spiritually bankrupt. There's no doubt about that. But I didn't know any different. I started at such a young age that I didn't have a really well-formed identity. And so I would just kind of, I didn't really know myself. I wasn't really, I was, kind of a mess. And, and I thought I was funny. I thought I was really funny at the time. I'm not sure that I was, but, I, uh, I was dating a girl because she drank about like I drank. So we were in love um, and, I was just in a place where I was like, it's all of these people and it's all of our friends and people we know. And this place, it's Knoxville's the problem. And I convinced her to move. I said, you want to move away? And she said, yeah. So we packed up her car and drove to Florida. Just figured we'd go to the beach. And somehow or another, I don't know, of all the beaches, we ended up in Jacksonville. And Jack's Beach is not that impressive. But that's where we ended up. I don't know why. And we were there, I don't know how long, 6 months or a year. I was probably there a year. She had abandoned her child to come with me. So it was not a good situation for her. Um, and and we were running around like, I think we worked at Labor Ready. We didn't have any money. We slept in her car in a church parking lot. We worked at a Labor Ready. Um, we eventually found this place to rent, and we rented a place. And she took a job at a golf course, and I took a job at this place called Rain Tree Construction. And I remember like genuinely wanting to get my life together. I didn't think, and I had I quit drinking for like maybe a couple weeks, not long. I was just really wanting to get my life together, and so I just smoked pot every day at work. That was my program, I guess. And I it was like it, yeah, it wasn't it wasn't long before her and I went to some bar and just drank, and I literally like hadn't drank in a little while, so I get like down a 12 pack in the car and I pass out in the car, right? Like just not, it was not a glamorous, I remember her and I had stayed in a place called the Siesta Motor Lodge, really, really rough place. I mean, not a good place. And I wasn't a good person. I would have, I was doing whatever I needed to do to get what I needed, and that was it. And in fact, when we left, we were renting a room, and when we left that place, I robbed the lady we lived with. I mean, that's just the kind of person I was, and didn't think twice about it. And and I think at that time I was, I, you know, I just felt like I wouldn't say now I kind of think I was, we talk about resentment, and I was so filled with hurt. I think I had seen in my Chicago family a really good life, and it was out of reach for me for sure. And my family and my other family, my dad's side of the family, really, really good people. And I was like racing my way to the bottom. You know what I mean? Like character, everything. And I think that's when things started disturbing me. That's when my drinking started to disturb me, and especially when she came back to Knoxville, and I stayed a little while and then came back too. And I think that's when I started like, I was drinking every day for the most part. I was just kind of staying here and there. I remember this. It's a lot of it's fuzzy, but I do remember 1993 because it was a blizzard. It was a huge blizzard, and I remember getting booze, desperately getting all the booze I needed together, and then realizing afterwards, like, oh shit, I forgot to get food. You know what I mean? And like, we thought that was kind of funny, but it's really, thinking about it now, it's like very sad. That's just where I was at. you know, I needed a certain amount of alcohol if we were going to get snowed in. And so anyway, I don't know if I've gone. That's way
That was
further
my
than.
that was my first year in Knoxville. You know, when I
Oh
moved
yeah,
to Knoxville, yeah, I was told that we don't get tornadoes and it doesn't snow. We got the blizzard of '93, and I think there was a tornado at some point.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
long after
and it like
that.
broke into the valley. They never go into the valley. It was like a ping pong
Yeah,
machine in the valley. Yeah.
yeah. So you know, what was the moment you realized you needed help?
Um. So that had been growing inside me for a while. I remember getting a job as a transporter at a hospital, and we would sit and wait until they called us, and then we'd go move people around. And I knew I was going to lose that job because they had a very strict attendance policy, and it was a matter of time before I got drunk and was either late or didn't show up, and that I wasn't going to be able to do that more than twice without losing. And I knew that they had a very strict policy, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep that job. And I remember sitting in the hospital in that little, I guess it was the area where they do radiation. I don't know, whatever that's called, where they take pictures with radiation. You know what I'm talking about?
X-rays.
X-ray. Yeah, we were in the
Yep.
X-ray department, and that's kind of where we were camped out until we had to transport somebody. And I remember looking out the window and seeing the St. Mary's convent and those nuns out there, and I desperately wanted to tell them that I was dying inside. You know what I mean? I wanted to tell somebody what was happening with me, and that seemed very futile. But I just remember this very like this longing, and it wasn't that I came to a moment where I realized I needed help. I didn't really think help was available. You know what I mean? I really didn't. I did not think that there was nobody lined up to spend $20,000 in treatment for me, and even if they were, I didn't know. I wouldn't have even known what that was. I wasn't convinced that alcohol was my problem because technically I could stop drinking and be crazy and miserable. You know what I mean? So and smoke pot every day at work. So I didn't think I was an alcoholic exactly. I thought I was a piece of shit. I thought I was a bottom feeder. I was sinking lower and lower and lower, but I didn't know help was available. What I guess the moment that I thought that might even be an option was I had a friend who was a maniac. He was my sister's boyfriend. My boyfriend's brother. His sister was my girlfriend. Sorry, that's so confusing. My girlfriend at the time had a little brother, and he would like steal. Back then, he would like steal gas. He would fill up the gas tank and drive off, and he would go into stores and take beer and bring it back. And he was a maniac. He gets thrown into treatment by his family, and I didn't even know what that was. I thought that's a sterile like hospital kind of place, and somehow or another, I spoke to him, and he asked me to come out to where he was staying, which was the Lighthouse. And anyway, I visited my buddy, and we walked over to Waffle House and sat there. And here's what I know. I don't know anything about halfway houses. I don't know anything but I know this kid Sam was a mess. He was a mess. He drank in an out of control way, and I totally get that. He seemed at perfect peace. He really seemed okay. He seemed like really okay in his own skin, and that was when the seed was planted for me. We talk at Waffle House for a couple hours. You know what I mean? I kind of fantasize about maybe quitting drinking, but I didn't really see that. I didn't really see it as an option. Like, even if I could quit, I had really built my life around changing how I felt, and so I was young. I wasn't convinced I was an alcoholic. It didn't look like but I was dragging bottom. I didn't lose a car. I didn't lose a house. I didn't lose a wife because I didn't have any of those things. And in retrospect, now I can see I was about to join the permanently antisocial community. That's what was about. That was what was happening. And I've seen guys, my younger brother, get on drugs and really go all the way, or further than I had to go. Anyway, I know this guy got sober, and I was out with my cousin, and I forgot my ID, and we were at one of those chiropractor talk at a Chinese restaurant where if you listen to the talk, you get a free meal. And so we were there for the free food. And here's that guy and this big kind of crazy gay guy with him. And they're like, hey, we're going to go to we're going to a meeting. You want to go to a meeting with us? And I was like, no, thanks, man. And my cousin, God bless her, was like, she goes, Kyle, I've always wanted to go to a meeting. Which is nobody's ever said. And so we go for her, for her curiosity, and I'm sitting there. I go get a cup of coffee. My hands are shaking, because I haven't had a drink yet that evening. And man, people started sharing. I'll just say this: the group looked like the day room at a mental health facility. Like it wasn't a classy group of people, but I will say this: people were saying things that I knew were true about me that I could never admit. People were openly sharing the truth about themselves, and that was a spiritual experience. I remember that night thinking, I'm going to come back, And to this day, I don't even think my cousin remembers that, but she probably saved my life. I was 21 years old. I was dying inside. I had been dying inside. My moral compass was non-existent. It turns out it was still in the box. It works fine. I just had never used it. I have never stopped since then showing up into communities of recovery and plugging in with the recovering community. And I didn't know that was really available. I mean, we would make jokes about treatment when we were drinking and using drugs and stuff with each other. We'd be like, oh, I think you've got a substance abuse problem, and we're just kind of funny. And of course, we hear about actors going to rehab and but I was far too cynical. And, and like I said, no one was really, I didn't have insurance. I wasn't, I wasn't employable. I wasn't any of those things. I always had jobs. But when I've written down all the jobs I had when I was drinking, it's hilarious. There's like hundreds. And I would like wait until I felt like I was about to get fired, and then I would take off, I would quit. And I was always struggling with like, well, if, I worked I once worked at this place where we were like grinding steel at this Beverly industrial plant. And I always felt like if I worked somewhere that I was that, so sometimes I would just quit because I didn't want to be that. I'm like, I'm not one of those, and I would just take off, and what's funny is I got a lot of jobs. I think that was back before social media and before you had a footprint that was so really easy to look at, so I could kind of like run around. And I one time got a job at a printing company where I bullshitted them, and they thought I was going to be like good at printing and like design, and I don't know anything about that. I felt like George Costanza. Like I had no idea what to do while I was there, and they kept me on for a while before they were like, Kyle, you just don't seem like you really want to be here. And it wasn't that I didn't want to be there. I didn't know how to do the job. But so anyway, I got sober, and I started hanging out with drunks, and it started to become a part of my life. It became a way of life for me. I did it until it became a way of life, and then that was in 1998, I haven't I haven't found it necessary to drink ever since then. And the miracle happened for me at some point where I wasn't white knuckling and I wasn't trying to stay sober. I just didn't need to drink anymore. Where my life changed and I didn't need to drink anymore. And I'll say it's been a long process. I mean, one of the interesting things that happened for me when I sobered up was this God thing. Everyone's talking about God and everything's about God and everything's a miracle. And look, the coffee's a miracle. And, everybody in recovery, so I had to kind of confront that. And I really did not want to believe in God. I definitely didn't want, you know, I think what was happening was the idea of God was so closely tied to the hurt I had with my father, who didn't seem to really want to have anything to do with me, somewhat for good reasons after a while, but when I was 15, that was just, brutal to lose my father in our household. And I did, I think there was a lot of hurt all around that subject. So it was tough for me to, it was a very gradual process. I warmed up to spiritual concepts and spiritual principles and, this kind of thing. And it took me a long time. In fact, I did a lot of traveling sober. I remember I always had to work somewhere because I needed a drink. I needed the paycheck. And after I'd been sober a while, I was like, I don't think I have to do anything. I mean, I can live very cheaply. And so I ended up taking this trip around the country with my friend. It was his idea. It was really his trip, but we ended up taking a trip around the country, and we spent a year going around. Went to Texas and Arizona, and we connected to the recovering community in every place we went, and it was amazing. I mean, I had traveled before and ended up at the Siesta Motor Lodge and saw crime, and I was a criminal. This time it was like people say, "What's the most messed up thing you saw?" And it's like I didn't really see anything messed up. I met some amazing people. It was like a whole different world, plugging into that community and seeing the, it was cool. We and it seemed like people wanted to be part of our adventure. So, and and we're throwing a dart at a map and driving there. And, it's like, that seems like a great freedom, but what do you do when you get there? So we kind of looked for events. We were like, if there was an event, we went to the event. And, we stayed in national parks. And there was some crazy stuff that happened on that trip. Like, we met a girl who had a class 6 felony for a DUI. And she said, if you come stay with me in Arizona, we met her at a camp out. She said, if you come stay with me in Arizona, I got a good deal for you. You can stay at my condo if you'll drive me to jail, because she could get out and go to work, but she couldn't drive. And we were like, all right. So we went there and did that. And turns out she worked at the Phoenician, which is like a 5-star luxury resort on Camelback Mountain. So one minute we're sleeping in cars, the next minute we're in like terry cloth robes, like they're sitting in the eucalyptus getting massages, and it was just insane. And we had a bunch of we had another lady that asked us to watch her ranch while she was out of town and take care of her horses. And that was cool. And so I had a lot of adventures because I was sober. And I think I was also, now that I think about it, I think I was kind of reliving the adolescence that I sort of missed out on. Going around, I got an opportunity to do some other traveling. I went to India. I went to Israel. I went to Europe, went all around Europe. And, and there's still tons of stuff in the U.S. I'd like to see. I still haven't seen. There's so much to see, but that was cool. And also, a couple years sober, I got an opportunity to work as a counselor at a drug and alcohol treatment place. And that was kind of a horizon line. I felt like less than zero, and here I got to become a counselor, and I didn't have the pedigree or the schooling to do that, but I had a friend kind of vouch for me and got in that way. And it's funny because a lot of the management turned over, and so after I was there for 4 years, when I was leaving that job, they said, "So, Kyle, are you going to go back to graduate school?" And I was like, I have a ninth grade education. I'm like, I don't think so. But they didn't know I didn't have a degree, and which is funny. But oh yeah, another thing that's happened. I started at some point. I started painting houses, and then I was able to be self-employed for a while, and then I went back to school in my 30s, and I'm kind of all over the place here, but I went back to school in my 30s and got an art degree. And you were talking about the oil painting, and I absolutely, I love that I was able to go back to school, got a 4-year degree. I had to take like stupid math, remedial math, all this stuff, tests, and it was funny. I was so afraid that I was about going to school because I had all this fear about my ability academically, and I said to a guy in recovery, I might have academic shortcomings. I'm afraid I have academic shortcomings. And he was like, started laughing, and he's like, "You're nothing but academic shortcomings. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Why would you think you wouldn't have that?" And it was just one of these things where all of my fears and all the things that coalesced when I was young, and the drinking kind of like, my identity was such a, I knew I was damaged. I knew I knew I wasn't intelligent. I was trying to show people that I was smart, and I knew, the worst problems I've had in recovery are not what I didn't know. It's what I was sure of and dead wrong. And that's one of those things where, I went back to school and I was able to be a good student. I mean, I struggled with certain things. I wasn't really, I wasn't great at math. I got up to pre-calculus in my associate's degree, and I just wasn't great at it. And I really struggled with Spanish for some reason, but it turned out I loved writing papers, loved it. And I loved doing artwork. I loved the painting portraits, and I got real passionate about it. And when I got out of school, I tried to kind of put together an art hustle. And while I was doing that, I was painting cabinets, and I was like, "Hey, you know what? I think I might start painting cabinets. It looks like a real living in this." And so that's what I do now. And art has kind of taken a hobby place, but also a spiritual place. And I think I'm really gifted at teaching art. I don't know that I'm the great, one of the things that I've gotten out of my recovery, because I was always trying to be more or less than human. I was always trying to be better or less than people. And it's this humility. I have over time become an average alcoholic, and that's a miracle. And I went to school and I became an average artist. I needed to be better or less or better, and I just realized I'm not near as great as I thought I was, and I'm not near as horrible as I think I am sometimes. And I just kind of, spiritually, uh, you know, getting out of that trap, that's such a surprise to me. I thought I was going to have to come to believe in a God that I didn't believe in somehow. And and then I would have this, I don't know, I would become religious. And what happened to me was I came to believe just in a power greater than me. And I started to really understand my need for God. And then the more I relate to a higher power, the more I start to become human. And that's what happened for me. It was like all of the things that we think of as God is all knowing, all powerful, all this, all that. I was always trying to act like that. Like I knew everything, or uh, I was controlling and manipulative, or and like, as I relate to God, I let go of all those, it's like, that's not my job. And even Christ, I understand, like, I'm not the martyr. I don't know if that's everybody's view on religion, but I know two things for sure. I'm not God, and I'm not the martyr. And when I try those roles, it doesn't lead to anything good. Like that's, it's just me being locked up and so it's weird. It's like becoming human has been a demotion in a sense because I'm demoted from running the show. But it's been a promotion in other areas where I felt so less than. And as I become human, I'm able to participate in my life. So, I was always running away from my family and ashamed of my family. And today I show up for my mom. I show up for my sister, Andrea, that ended up being a treasure of a relationship. Andrea calls me. She relies on me. I can't, and I've let go of saving my family. I used to think somebody needs to save all of them. I don't think that way anymore, and for a long time I thought, well, I got to be, I just I just had so little humility. And I hesitate to use that word, but it's like my ego was so stretched out one way or the other. And, not drinking and growing spiritually just very gradually started putting me back into shape and back into, being a regular old human being. And so that's kind of what recovery has done for me, and it affects everything. It affects every aspect of my life. I'm not as perfectionistic. I'm not as manipulative. I'm not as, all of those things. I'm not as self-centered, and a really cool thing happens, uh, is that I started noticing that I had a little bit more room to care about other people, and that wasn't something I conjured up or created. It was just like, I, through, through a spiritual practice, I started noticing that I could care about you and that I could really care about others. That's what I mean by that. My moral compass was still in the box. I wasn't thinking of others. And today, I remember in sober, I always thought relationships would come really easy for me. I'm personable. I love people. I'm sober, and they were really tough. And a big part of it was, I just didn't know how to set myself aside and love another person. It was all about what am I going to get, and me. And just today, relationships look a lot different. Uh, my ego. It's okay for me to set my ego aside. It's okay for me to absorb an injustice once in a while, and more than that, it's fulfilling to set myself aside and honestly and honestly love other people. And I'm learning to do that. And it's an ongoing process, but it's like, um, that's, what's important to me today is loving, my sister, trying to be a brother to my sister. And I had to learn a whole new set of boundaries. She used to want me to, we used to have kind of boundaryless relationship, and not in a terrible way, but just in a, like a, we grew up like, you know, we grew up depending on each other. And one thing after another, I've noticed wrong dependence, wrong. And only through my relationship with God do I start to find how to let go of wrong dependence. And so once I'm dependent on God, then all these other relationships start kind of falling into place. And so my sister's a big one where we now have a brother sister relationship. And if I want to have a sister, I got to learn, I got to be a good brother. And it was a role that I had to kind of think about and choose to take on rather than whatever I was being. And the same thing with my mom. I'm a good son to her. My father and I aren't close, but I love him. When I talk to him, I tell him I love him. And he and my stepmom are, I think, doing well. They live in Oak Ridge, and we're not estranged, but we're not really tight. And and it's all just kind of okay now. I used to I used to think about my family as this, I would be like, I got to be spiritually fit when I go visit my family, which just means I think I'm better than them, which isn't true. And so that's been a long journey to just go to become human. And somebody said the meaning of life is in playing the role we were assigned. And I really like that now. I'm interested in whatever it is today that's in I'm okay with being in my family. I'm okay with being who I am. I'm okay with being this height. I'm okay with whatever it is. I can accept and live in what my actual life. Uh, and back when I was drinking, nothing was ever good enough. And if I made $10, I would have to tell you I made 20 just to make it sound a little better. And you know what I mean? I was always scheming and trying to make myself uh, I knew that, back then I thought if you liked me, I had tricked you. That's what I thought. So then I needed to dance around and figure out how to keep you from rejecting me or whatever. It was just super crazy. And, sobriety has been challenging, but every step of the way, it's been worth it. And, somebody was asking me the other day you'll know what this is from, but somebody said that science hasn't done so yet, but maybe one day they'll come up with a pill and they can make alcoholics drink like normal people. And I've thought a lot about that. If I could take a pill and drink like a normal person, I can take or leave cigars. If I could drink that way, would I want to? And the answer is absolutely not, because I've been able to participate in my own recovery. I've had some of the deepest and most awesome relationships, and I've been able to kind of give back and help other people get sober. And on that topic, nobody I wanted to get sober got sober. My little brother didn't. He died using. My best friend didn't. I had another friend that I thought he would really be good sober, but he didn't. He never did that. They kind of dabbled in it, but nobody ever wanted to. But scores of people that I've met that were trying to get sober let me help them. And I didn't like help them like I'm some great, guru. It's more like I shared with them what I'm actively and currently doing now. And basically it's like, you think when you're helping somebody, you're up here and they're here. And that's not it at all. It's more like they're trusting me and telling me what's going on. And then we're both walking together. And so it's a real sacred thing where if somebody asks me for help, they're going to kind of open up and trust me, but I'm not doing anything for them. And I don't know that I don't think I deserve to be sober based on all the great things I've done. You know what I mean? I see my sobriety as a gift. There are certain things I do to participate in it and to safeguard against, and it's not avoiding places that serve alcohol anymore. Now it's just like, it's avoiding certain ways of thinking. If I've got a good resentment going or a lot of self-pity, I got to write it out, journal. I got to do something about it. I can't live in that kind of a state of mind. It's foolish to say I'm never going to get resentful, but I can't live there. So
I like to say it's it's okay to sit on the pity pot, Kyle, but at some point you got to flush.
absolutely.
So, what would you say to somebody who may be listening out there who's feeling hopeless about their condition?
Well, I would want to say there's a way out. You don't have to live like that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't, what I would say to them is, when I was in that spot, I wouldn't have liked it, but I would have said to them that there is hope and there is a way out. Um, and not to mince words, it's going to have something to do with God or a higher power. I wouldn't have wanted to hear that, but that's what I would say.
I think that's a good way. That's the honest answer, you know.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to share?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I could talk about recovery all night long with you, Joe. I really, I love this topic. I get fired up. There's been so many miracles. There's been so many there's been weak moments and strong moments, and there's so much in it. You know, I feel like we could take one topic and go on and on. Um, no, I think, yeah, I don't know if there's anything that I wanted to say that I didn't say.
That's fair enough. Well, I appreciate you, but I can't let you go, Kyle, until we do our rapid fire questions.
All right, where are we at on time? I don't have a watch with me.
We're at rapid fire question time.
Okay, good.
We're good, Kyle. We're fine, honestly. All right, are you ready, sir?
Ready to go.
All right. What is your favorite recovery slogan?
Think, 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 and the reason for that is because someone shared with me this once. I mean, one, thinking is not the enemy. In spiritual circles, people are like, no, my mind is not a good thing. But a guy said to me once, if you have a problem and you think of a solution, the first time it doesn't really work. The second time, by the third time, you may have left the arena of thinking and entered the arena of obsession. So I say 3 tries at problem solving, and then it's time to pray, talk to someone, do something a little different, because thinking's not the enemy, but obsession is something else.
Yeah. What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Keep it simple, stupid. It just seems mean, and like, why would you keep it simple is good. Why would you say keep it simple, stupid?
Why do you have to add the stupid?
Yeah,
I agree,
yeah.
Kyle.
That was a really good slogan.
Yeah, they ruined it. What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
Sobriety superpower? Well, in the last couple of years, I've never felt like I was a really strong, dominant guy. You know, I'm just not like I'm not an alpha kind of. I don't know. What guys ask me to sponsor them, and they're looking for someone like Mickey on, to be a hard ass, and I'm not that. But I've noticed over the couple of years, there's been a handful of guys that relapsed after a lot of time sober, and they tried to come back, and it was really, really brutal. And they asked me to help them. And so for whatever reason, dudes that have had a lot of time feel comfortable with me. So that's been something God's used for me that I didn't see coming.
That's pretty cool. If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
You're in for a hell of a ride. I don't know.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Well, this isn't a positive song, but I listened to the Pictures of You by The Cure. And I don't know why it lifts my spirits. It just reminds me of, I almost missed out on God and entering into reality, really, because it wasn't my idea. And something about that song reminds me of where I used to be and where I'm at today. And there's a great freedom in it.
It's an awesome song, by the way.
It's a good song.
Awesome
Yeah, I don't
song.
know that it conveys any of that in the song, but
If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
one wish to help with my recovery. I guess I would. That's a hard question to answer because so much of my recovery and spiritual life is about living in life on life's terms and living acceptance and getting into reality. And, I guess it would be to stop and look at people the way that God sees them before I interact with them.
I love that. What step do you love the most?
I think they all kind of work together as a whole, but I think the inventory is probably the most exciting thing for me now because if I find something new that I can inventory, I often have insight and new information, and there's a great freedom in that.
What step do you love the least?
Man, I don't. Let's see, what step do I love the least? I will say I struggled the most with step 7, with humbly relating to God.
Fair enough. What is one of your favorite movies?
The Way Back. It's got Sam Rockwell, and I'll cry through the whole thing. It's about a kid that there wasn't a lot of room for him and his family, and he runs off and he meets Sam Rockwell, and there's something spiritual in that movie that's conveyed on film that I got a lot of favorite movies. That's just the first one that popped in my mind, but I got a lot of favorite movies. But yeah, that one in particular, there's something really. It's really got a lot of heart in it.
I'm going to check it out. And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Just that I know you. I once I was at Mass and everybody goes up for communion, and I was thinking about meeting, you're meeting with a priest there, but I was thinking about meeting with God, and I had this great fear that he wouldn't know me. He wouldn't recognize me. And so I hope that I'm in communion with God and that he would know me.
Well, I appreciate getting to know you better during this, the last hour, Kyle. Thank you for sharing your story, man.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, man. This has been great. I love what you're doing. I love this whole show.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And for the rest of you, please subscribe to our friends at thedailyponderables.com, your recovery source for inspiration and encouragement every day. A new episode of the Cup of Joe Show is released every Thursday at noon. Visit thecupofjoeshow.net, or you can listen to the show on your favorite podcast apps, Apple, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the "the." Please like, follow, subscribe, and share because someone out there needs to hear this today. Thank you all for listening.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's Experience, Strength, and Hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, Don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to the Cup of Joe Show.